Going live on today's episode of Locked On 49ers, scouting the mock drafts. We've got a couple of safeties from Illinois, Sidney Brown and Jartavius Quan Martin, Kei'Trel Clark, and maybe a sleeper for the 49ers in this draft class. And, of course, we're going to get into the chat as we do on this live episode to kick off draft week. It's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker with you as always at BD Peacock, at Eric_Crocker on Twitter. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who can take you on that journey of self-discovery from wherever you are. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today and get 10% off your first month. All right. We get folks already joining us in the chat, pumped about this San Francisco 49ers draft and the NFL draft that's coming up this week, Croc. And we've had a lot of homework, and shout out to all the listeners that have been asking us for certain prospects to look at. And we see a lot of mock drafts and we see a lot of picks for the 49ers here. And there's a couple of prospects here with, first of all, Croc, how's anybody passing on that Illinois backfield when you got Devin Witherspoon, you got Sidney Brown, you got Jartavius Martin. And I think last year, didn't they send a safety to the NFL who was really good with the Lions as a rookie in the 4th round? Well, Kirby Joseph, was he from Illinois as well?
I think so, huh? Was he? I think so.
Oh, right? That's crazy.
I gotta look that up. Yeah, I think Kirby Joseph was from. They've had a lot of talented guys there in the backfield, and I think that's where you start to ask, who the hell is their DB coach? Well, so first, who's their DB coach, and also who's doing their recruiting?
Mm-hmm.
And for a while though, they did have Lovie Smith. So I don't know if Lovie Smith had a lot to do with a lot of the guys that they were getting, but yeah, Kirby Joseph, definitely an Illinois defensive back as well.
Austin says Lakers in 5. And what I will say to that is Warriors in 6. Can we get a Warriors-Lakers series potentially in this playoffs? Croc, I know this isn't a basketball podcast, but I know it's NBA playoffs. I just watched the Warriors tie up the series with the Sacramento Kings. A lot of Kings fans listen to the podcast. There's a lot of, Kings fans, 49ers fans, the thing they can agree on is San Francisco 49ers football. So shout out to all the Kings fans. Shout out to all the Warriors fans that are listening. I've loved what I've seen from the Kings in this run as well. So either way, one of those teams is going to beat the Lakers probably later in the playoffs. So we have that to look forward to.
Whoever gets past, the team in this series, they got to go see Phoenix Suns. And that's going to be, KD's he's just a monster. And finally, he was just like, you know what? I'm going to be selfish. And he just went on a tear, and they just couldn't stop him. That's going to be tough for the Kings or the Warriors. Good luck.
And the Lakers. The Lakers got to get there, though.
Yeah.
You're not worried about it, Croc? Different team since the trade deadline, right?
Drastically different. Not even remotely the same. But a lot of people still think it's the same team. It is not even close.
All right, we're going to talk about some of these prospects. Let's go to that Illinois backfield first, Croc. And I don't know which prospect you want to talk about first, but there's a couple of interesting players. They're both very different in that Illinois backfield. When it comes to Jartavius Martin, I believe he wants to be called Quan Martin. I'm seeing Quan Martin is his middle name, and that's what he wants to go by. So we'll call him Quan if he wants to call himself Quan. Quan Martin and Sidney Brown, two very different guys. Actually, let's start with Sidney Brown because we just talked about Kirby Joseph, who ended up in the NFL as a rookie last year. I think maybe a comp for Sidney Brown is very similar to what we saw out of Nick Cross last year. 3rd round safety who's super athletic. Is he a box guy? Can he play center?
What's his testing?
Well, is the question. And he ran well. Because I know you don't like to look at the testing first, Croc. We'll talk about that after. Let's go to the scouting report first, and I'll talk about why maybe he compares a little bit to Nick Cross, who's a guy we liked for the Niners in the late 3rd last year.
Okay, so I did see some stats, and I think I saw this stat just on Twitter. And every time I see something about a prospect, especially a guy that we plan on talking about, I'll tag you in it. Like, okay, look, this is a guy that's getting some kind of buzz. So I did see he had a bunch of interceptions, 6 interceptions, 5 interceptions, whatever it was. So I'm like, playmaker. And I always like those type of guys. And I do believe if you just watch the highlights, which I have not watched Martin's or Brown. I have not watched Brown's highlights. Okay. But if you just watch the highlights, I bet it looks wild. Like, man, just crazy playmaker flying all over the place. But when you watch the film, and I actually watched some games, I went a little bit deeper. I watched a few from 2021, and I also watched a few from 2022 season. 2021, and I'm trying to identify, what are they? Everybody says these are the guys. These are the safeties, all right, that you should be looking into. My first note, 2021, Brown getting torched and confused a lot the deeper he was. So I felt like the further away from the line of scrimmage that he was, the more lost he was kind of getting a little bit in coverage, whether it was bad eyes, guys getting behind him. I mean, I would see it 3 times in this game, 2 times in this game. And I'm like, dang, what the heck is going on? Everybody said this guy's amazing, right? But keeps getting kind of beat a little bit or in bad spots and then not being able to get over the top. So I'm like, okay. I continued to watch, and I noticed what they did with him, not just that most of that year, 2021, but also a lot in 2022. They used him a ton around the line of scrimmage. And not that they only use him a ton around the line of scrimmage. He'd be there for run fits and things like that, but he's guarding tight ends. He can guard slot receivers. And I said, this is a legit box safety, but a real good man-to-man guy. He was extremely aggressive in coverage. I thought he did a terrific job of really contesting passes. Even if he gave up a catch, in coverage, like he was right there and he was contesting it. So I know a lot of 49er fans are looking for that, like pure, I think when we think of safety is like, too high, single high, out in space, flying around, making plays. And he probably can do that. But where I saw his biggest value was a legit man-to-man or maybe a match type guy, which would align with 49ers running a lot of quarters. He'd be really good with that. I did not necessarily like him in space playing with his eyes. I think he needs a legit assignment for, okay, I'm reading these couple guys, and then based off of that, it's going to take me to the ball, and I think he does well with that.
So the testing was really good with these Illinois guys. And I saw the same with Sidney Brown. And a lot of people keep asking us about Sidney Brown. And I watched him. I was like, man, he's a box safety. I don't know if the 49ers need a box safety. And people keep asking. So I watched more and more. And I was like, okay, got to get Croc on the case. So I really wanted you to watch Sidney Brown so we could talk about him here on the podcast, because I think that third, early 4th round area is probably where he's going to go. And that's where the 49ers have 3 selections, and they need safeties. They need corners in this class. They need defensive backs. So Sidney Brown, he's going for the knockout blow, and he's clearly athletic and he's fast, and I see him flying around. But like you, there was nothing that I saw of him where I was like, this guy I feel good about in sort of a deep safety role. And maybe I didn't watch the right games. Maybe I wasn't looking at it right. That's why I like Croc to, I'm always going to defer to Croc when it comes to defensive backs. But I just, I saw a box safety. I don't know if it's what the 49ers need.
But hold on. Okay. A lot of times when we think of a box safety, we're thinking of a guy that can't be out in space or can't cover. And that wasn't necessarily like, because when you're talking to our fan base and you say box safety, they're thinking Cam Chancellor, right? Hard hitter, but it's like, hey, we're not asking you to play man-to-man on too many people, but we want you to kind of, be out there and you're just that guy in space and people are intimidated by you. But he wasn't quite. I mean, he was like a legit coverage man-to-man type guy. Like, box in the sense of I liked him playing closer to the line of scrimmage, but it was, it was like good movement skills. Thought he had good feet. Again, the man coverage skills. It really was more so like Jimmy Ward. Think of Jimmy Ward's best strengths as a safety, and that was more his strength.
Hold on. Are you talking about Martin or are you talking about Brown?
I'm talking about Brown. Now again, okay, we're gonna get to Martin,
Okay.
but Brown, his man coverage skills were good. Now they didn't ask the same as they did with Martin. Martin is a legit nickel slot.
Okay.
But Brown
I was just
playing
gonna say
close to
because
line scrimmage on tight ends, like man to man, like I felt like that was his biggest strength.
that's interesting because I thought the Ward comp was for Martin. And that's what I was going to bring up is like, if you're trying to replace Jimmy Ward, Martin might be your guy slot, but I think he'd play a free safety role. With Brown, I saw a guy that I thought more was like a, go for the knockout blow, sort of a box safety that is fast, but I never saw him do anything in coverage. Yeah. So let's go to the testing numbers here for Sidney Brown out of Illinois. So just a hair under 5'10", 211 pounds. That's why I kind of brought up the Nick Cross comp from last year. And Nick Cross was a late 3rd round pick to the Colts. And he was, he ran faster. He's a little bit bigger too. He's closer to 6 feet, I think, and ran in the 4.3s. But kind of would knock people out. Was a big rocked up dude. And Sidney Brown's sort of a rocked up guy, 211 pounds at just under 5'10". Ran 4.47 in the 40 and a half inch vertical, 23 bench press reps. Did not run his agilities. And again, I think there's a reason why a lot of these guys that don't run short shuttle, don't run 3-cone, they don't want to test agilities because they might not be that good at it. And so I see that linear downhill sort of a player who will knock you out, and when he sees it, we can get there and go in a straight line. He'll hit you and he can run. But I didn't really see the man-to-man stuff. I wasn't really looking for it because I'm looking for a safety here. So I didn't really think about the man-to-man aspect of Sidney Brown. It's interesting because his partner in crime there, Quan Martin, is really good in a sort of a coverage role as well.
Right, and I think that's the part you're not really looking for because again, safety, and then everything you see PFF is like safety. But again, when I was watching them at safety, I'm like, this guy is lost out there. But I see him around the box and around the line of scrimmage, and he's more so around the line of scrimmage. Matter of fact, the interesting thing, because everybody talks about this tandem of safeties that Illinois has, and it was like, there's a different guy that played majority single high, number 7. And he had a nice, and he's a senior as well. I ended up looking him up. He had a nice interception over the top, showed great range, picked off a pass. Senior right now, or he was a senior this past season. So he should be entering the draft, I'd assume. But, that's the guy that was more, I think, with the 49ers, like fans, when they're thinking safety, they're thinking more 7, even more so than Brown and Martin.
In the chat, Drew says, Hufanga's a box safety. They need an Ed Reed, Earl Thomas type. Well, yeah, it'd be nice to get Ed Reed or Earl Thomas. But I agree. I agree what you're saying. Like, they need a center fielder. They need a free safety. They got their strong safety, which is why when I watched Sidney Brown, I was like, I don't think he's a fit for the 49ers. He's a nice player, but I don't think he really works for what the 49ers are looking for.
We got Dr. Steve Brule in the chat, and he says, people comp Sidney Brown to Hufanga. The only thing I felt like was similar, and again, the games I watched, I did see him get one pick, but it was kind of like the last play of a game. Quarterback kind of heaved it up, and then he got the interception. But the one thing I guess I would give to him is that's similar is maybe playmaking ability based off of interception numbers, but just in the sense of like watching them. And you talked about just flying in, throwing his body around, which he will do that.
Once you see it, you're a missile to the ball carrier. I think that's maybe the comp that people are seeing.
Okay. But what I would ask of them is probably completely opposite. Like, I wouldn't tell Hufanga, hey, just go out there and just guard this guy man-to-man, guard this guy man-to-man, and then be comfortable with how tight of coverage that'll be from man press or off coverage. And I think that's where Brown and Hufanga differ.
All right. Great 1765 says Jar Martin will be the best safety in this draft. Let's go to the tape on Jartavius Martin, a.k.a. Quan Martin, also from Illinois, Sidney Brown's teammate. I think Croc and I both, it sounds like we agree, not maybe the greatest fit for what the 49ers might be looking for right now in this draft class in that 3rd round area. Is Quan Martin maybe the guy the 49ers might be looking for in that 3rd round area if he is there? I've seen some mocks of them starting to go a little bit higher, Croc, than where the 49ers are drafting. Let's get to Martin next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by BetterHelp Therapy online. Getting to know yourself can be a lifelong process, especially because we're always growing, we're always changing, and it's sometimes difficult to get to know yourself. And once you change, getting to know your new self. Therapy is all about deepening your self-awareness and understanding, because sometimes we don't know what we want or why we react the way we do until we talk through things. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who can take you on that journey of self-discovery from wherever you are. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, super convenient, flexible, suitable to your schedule and lifestyle. However you want to meet with a therapist, you can do it over text, you can do it over video conference if you want. Just fill out a brief questionnaire and get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Discover your potential with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. All right, Croc, the second prospect we're going to talk about on today's show, and hopefully we can get into the chat a little bit later as well about some of these prospects, is Jartavius Quan Martin from Illinois. He played with Sidney Brown on that defense in Illinois. Tons of great defensive backs coming out of Illinois right now. I've seen Quan Martin, depending on where you look. Some people see him as a third, fourth round guy. I've seen some people think he's maybe the second best defensive back in this, or the second best safety, quote unquote, in this class. But similarly to Brian Branch out of Alabama, sort of a slot safety hybrid. But it's also a sign, Croc, that if your college football team puts you in that position, that means you're the best guy in the secondary, because that's where they're putting all their best guys now. But it's making it difficult to scout that transition to the NFL because you don't see him deep in coverage.
Safety. So essentially what he's playing, and in my notes I put safety/nickel because I just see him in the nickel. But really what we're talking about is star position, right? Like, who played that position? Minkah Fitzpatrick played that position for Alabama, right? So for those of you who haven't watched it, again, you see safety, and Minkah Fitzpatrick essentially was listed as safety, but Minkah was a nickel at Alabama. And I think that's what we're seeing with Martin. That's what we saw from another guy, and we had Ross Jackson. Ross Jackson tweeted me today about him in response to one of my tweets. We also had Peter Bukowski tweet me about it. Peter said that he felt like Martin was the best or second best non-boundary cornerback. So basically, essentially, like, anybody that's not like a corner, he felt like this is the next best defensive back. So that's high praise. But he reminded me of a lot of a guy that played for the Saints with Ross Jackson, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson at Florida was a nickel. He and people were like, oh, he's a safety, he's a nickel. What's he going to be? He gets to the NFL, plays a lot of nickel for the New Orleans Saints, and then he goes to Philadelphia. I feel like they used him in the more of a traditional safety role, a little bit more than maybe what we saw from New Orleans. But with Martin, I think, again, everybody said safety, safety. I see a slot cornerback. Like, that's essentially what he played. At times, you would see him do a little bit of single high. I didn't see a whole lot. Peter said that there was a game he watched where he played a lot more single high. I saw very few single high. There were more inverted coverages that I saw from him. So essentially he'd start off in that nickel and then at the snap go back. So that's what you call, when you call it inverted, right? Is guys that start down, then they go back, and then maybe somebody else comes down. So it's kind of an inverted, like a reverse type defense there. But and then he plays some kind of like safety, essentially kind of a too high, or maybe like a match that he's doing there. But I saw a nickel guy. And I saw a nickel guy that could run with verticals, and they're putting you out there in the slot. That's the thing I'm looking for first. Can you run with the vert? And I thought he did that very well. And I posted a clip of what happens when it's not a perfect rep. Everybody wants to post a perfect reps all the time on social media, right? They want to show, oh, look, he does this great. It's like, okay, is that consistent? Well, what happens sometimes? Sometimes it's not a great rep. Sometimes I am beat. And I want to see, how does the guy react when he's beat? And I thought Martin did a good job. And this one, I was like, okay, I think I like this guy a lot, where he's beat off the line. He run and there's a space that's created. And I was taught, if there's space, you must chase. All right. So he chases the space. Once he gets in position to where now I can touch the receiver, boom, snapped his head around, boom, gets the interception. Now, the ball wasn't great, but he was able to take advantage of it because he put himself in position to get to that ball by not looking back early. And you're going to be consistently better when you have good habits like that, as opposed to maybe getting lucky because you guessed. So I thought that was a terrific job there. But overall, good feet, good change of direction, good vertical speed. I didn't think he was like a blazer or anything like that, but definitely a guy that can run with the vert from there. I question his run fits a little bit. How much does he want to get off of blocks? That was something where sometimes I see him get washed a little bit. But as far as from a coverage standpoint, I thought he looked good from a nickel. Now, what would the 49ers do with him? You talked about him being more of a clone to Jimmy Ward. I would say he is more like what Ward was coming into the NFL, where 49ers like, all right, you're a safety, but you're gonna play nickel. And I see him being more of that. And I think Brown, I compare him more of what Ward was like for the 49ers now, where it's like, okay, you're gonna play some deep step, but we like you around the line of scrimmage, covering tight ends, covering slot receivers, doing those type of things. But overall, legit nickel corner. What does he look like at safety? I'd have to see more, but I like the movement skills and I really like the upside. Don't know the testing, but I liked what I saw from him on film. I don't even know how big, what's his size or anything.
Did he stand out to you in any certain way of like, okay, this guy can run, or this guy's a certain size, maybe big, maybe small? Just watching him on tape.
I don't think anything just like popped, but
Like good or bad. So he didn't look slow, right?
No, nothing popped in a negative way.
All right, here we go. Quan Martin. It's pretty good testing. Like those Illinois dudes. Very, very good testing for a lot of these guys. So Quan Martin at the combine, excuse me. He didn't do anything at his pro day because everything he did at the combine, he did it well. So at the combine, 5'11", 194. So pretty slim, which is again like kind of like the Ward body type, right? It's not the biggest guy. 4.46 in the 40, which is solid. 1.44 10-yard, which is blazing in the 10-yard split of that 40-yard dash, and a 44-inch vertical croc, 11.1 broad jump.
Ooh,
again,
explosive.
No agilities for the Illinois DBs for some reason.
Interesting. It's like they're not working on it. It's all about your steps. You gotta know your steps on the 5-10-5. It's 3, 6, no, 4, 6, 3. If you get those steps down, you can have a really good time.
44-inch vertical. I mean, at 5'11", we're talking about a dude who's throwing down, but like between the legs dunks.
Incredible athleticism there, and kind of reminds me of like Juan Thornhill, right? Like he was a super athletic guy, very versatile. Another guy that was drafted last year to the Cincinnati Bengals out of Michigan. Gosh, I'm blanking on his name right now. Number 30, Hill.
Oh, with a D, right? It starts with a D.
I can't think of it, but I just feel like it's Hill, number 30.
Those names from last year's class already escaping my brain. There's not any room. I put new prospects in. The old prospects got to go.
You guys will see him. He got drafted, I think, late first round.
Yeah, he's going to start now for the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah, and he was Daxton Hill. There we go. Thanks, Steve, in the chat. So Daxton Hill, he was kind of that guy, right? Like small, not big. Now, one thing about Daxton Hill, I identified his toughness. He had a big quarterback. First of all, I think people underrate how big quarterbacks are. And it's like they're big guys. So most of these quarterbacks are like 6'3", 225 and up, right? Like these guys are hit big. So when they're running at a guy like Daxton Hill, who's 5'11", 190 pounds, like there's a big gap there. And there was a quarterback running full speed at him, and he just took the quarterback head on, boom, picked him up, dipped him. I was like, whoa, that's toughness. You got guts, right? I'm not sure I quite saw that from Quan Martin. And now I didn't see him in that position, but also there weren't really times where I saw him throwing his body around that I said, man, his toughness or that, him in the run game, like that's a plus. And he was around the line of scrimmage enough because he played primarily at that nickel or star spot for me to see it. And I just never quite saw that. So at the NFL level, you're a nickel, like you're going to have to tackle. And that's still kind of something I have not seen yet from the film that I watched.
I saw some, and some of what I saw with Quan Martin wasn't all 22, which makes it really hard with safeties. So you get an incomplete picture. But I saw some really nice reps against the run where he's coming down, from out of the screen basically, and he's finishing and he's tackling guys and he's throwing his body around enough. He's not a thumper. He's 194 pounds, but from what I saw from Quan Martin, I'd have no problems. Clearly, nickel is fine. I'm good with him in the nickel. I'd have no problems projecting him to someone who can play starting caliber free safety in the NFL. And you put yourself in a position where you could be wrong, and maybe he's not the best at it. But I would project that he'd be able to do it, even though I didn't see a ton of it on tape because I saw him in space. I saw him moving around. I saw his athleticism, saw him in coverage. I just saw so much I liked, and especially with the 49ers when they like to move guys around, bring a guy down, bring a guy back. I think Quan Martin would be a fantastic fit. I just question whether he's even going to be there at 99 for the 49ers at this point.
That's the biggest question mark. And you start talking about his athleticism, and it kind of reminds me a lot. I talked about Juan Thornhill, but Juan Thornhill's film popped.
Yeah.
I mean,
range. And you see him a lot in center field where he would erase that corner. Like, he would go from middle of the field to the sideline, and he would get there in a hurry.
Yeah, I think the ACL kind of hurt him a little bit, but I mean, he was everywhere. I mean, he was in the slot. He would line up at the linebacker position and play man and in deep safety and in disguising, and that was some of my favorite film to watch. Juan Thornhill.
By the way, Martin had 3 interceptions as well, so some ball production as well from that entire Illinois backfield. So doing a great job over there. Are the Fighting Illini, right? Is that what they're called?
Yeah, that's kind of a stupid name too. Like, what is it?
It's just the same name as what your name is already.
Right.
You're like, Crocker. What do you want to call your football team? I don't know. The Fighting Crockers.
The Fighting Crocker. But you got to change it because it's Illinois and Illini. So
the Fighting Croquet.
Yeah, Croquet. It's like, fool, we know it's Crocker, fool.
All right. Another sleeper in this class at corner, Kei'Trel Clark, and whatever you guys want to talk about in the chat as well to finish up this live episode of Locked On 49ers. And thank you once again, everybody, for making Locked On 49ers your first listen every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Shout out to all the everydayers. Hope everyone is watching the 2023 Locked On NFL Mock Draft Special, which was so much fun. And it ends with Crocker making the pick for the San Francisco 49ers at 99 because it shows the first pick of every team, even those teams that did not have a first rounder in the 2023 NFL Draft. And, of course, so much other great stuff on the network. Make sure you're all subscribed up. Locked On 49ers, Peacock and Williamson, Locked On NFL Draft. It's all great stuff. It's all what we do here every day on the network.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of people asking about Julius Brents. How much Julius Brents have you watched, Croc? Because he seems to have a pretty big groundswell with 49ers fans as a player that they want to see. I got to be honest, guys. I don't think he's going to be there at 99. But if he is, Croc, you like Julius Brents?
I have a take that's probably going to be a little unpopular amongst 49er fan base. I don't know if the 49ers are taking a cornerback. I think we want them to because we see that, like, who is that guy? And again, I have watched some of Brents, and I actually watched him at the Senior Bowl. I'll get to him in a second. But I think it's clear that you need that, like, who is that starting cornerback? It's like, okay, is it going to be Diamador Lenore? But if you draft a guy, and I actually had to stop because I was talking to a parent. I actually have a kid out here in Arkansas. He just flew in today, and I'm training him for the week to prepare him for rookie minicamp. And his dad, someone mocked him to the 49ers, right? So he's like, man, you think, like, would the 49ers be a good spot, whether he gets drafted there or, like, as an undrafted guy? And I was like, everybody wants the 49ers draft a corner, including, like, I would love to see them do that. But I don't know if they are, because if you draft a guy at pick 99, right, at the cornerback position, you're essentially getting a guy in a similar tier as Diamador Lenore, as Samuel Womack, as Ambry Thomas. Like, you have those guys. You don't have the other kid out of Illinois, the cornerback, number 31.
Witherspoon, Devin Witherspoon.
Like, you don't have a Witherspoon, right? But Witherspoon's going first round. So, like, it would make sense that if you're the 49ers and you're in the first round and you want to draft Witherspoon, I get it. But you want to draft one of these guys in the late in the third with comp picks or in the fourth round, essentially they are in the very same tier as guys you have. So it's almost like just kind of throwing these guys there without having like this legit serious, like really upside that's going to make a huge difference. So that's just my opinion. I would assume that they go more, and again, maybe they draft a bunch of corners and I'm just super wrong. But man, do you just go like maybe 7th round, undrafted? We get some guys and kind of see what you have with Lenore and these guys and Oliver and Womack, and you kind of like these guys and Embry Thomas, and you guys kind of duke it out for some of those spots.
It's interesting. I don't know what they're going to do because they haven't drafted safeties either, but clearly they need someone to be an understudy and a future starting safety, free safety on this team, because I don't think you can expect Tishon Gibson to play longer than after this year. He's on a 1-year contract. And so, but they just haven't, they haven't, I thought that last year, and they just haven't really spent resources on safety. And so I don't know what to expect from the 49ers. And I would expect a safety before a corner, but I would think they'd be into a corner as well. So I don't know. It's tough. Great one says Brents or Jalen Jones. I saw Jalen Jones as a safety from day one to me, but he's like kind of a cover 3, maybe type of corner. I like the way he hits.
Which one?
Jalen Jones. We watched him early on in the process. He was in one of the first mocks when we started this Scouting the Mock series. I see
which team? I mean, we've watched.
That was Texas A&M corner.
Yeah. Physical guy.
200. Yeah.
I remember him coming down.
I think he ran like low 4.5s or high 4.5s, depending on how you look at it. 4.59, something like that. 4.57. I like him at safety. He was the guy I comped to your guy. I always blank on his name. The 49ers safety came from Washington as a corner. UW.
Oh my God, Deshaun
Goldson. I saw Deshaun Goldson, like corner conversion to safety. That's what I thought. Jalen Jones. I don't think you're drafting Jalen Jones in the 3rd round to be a cover corner, but he could be a day 3, sort of a cover 3 style corner too.
I think he's one I was watching and he like knocked himself out of a game.
Yes. Yeah. He's not afraid to hit people.
He's not afraid to hit. That's for sure. He's throwing his body around there.
It was like a corner that's maybe not quite athletic enough to stick with guys in the NFL. All right. Let's see who's got a corner.
All right. So a lot of times when we watch these guys that are kind of in this tier, and we'll see where Brents goes. I feel like Brents feels more like reminds me a lot of the big cornerback, number 25, drafted to the Washington Commanders. Big cornerback out of Minnesota, Benjamin St. Juste.
Yep.
So Brents reminds me a lot of Benjamin St. Juste. I think he's a little twitchier maybe than St. Juste, but he reminds me a lot of St. Juste. St. Juste was like, I was like, okay, this is a legit corner. I think he went 3rd round. I can see Brents going, bottom of the 2nd, at some point in the 3rd, depending on how well he ran. Now, again, some of these guys kind of are in that Ahkello Witherspoon tier, and Witherspoon ran extremely well. So, I think everybody think, this guy won't make it to 99. And it's like, well, everybody can't not make it to 99.
Right. Yeah. Someone's got to make it to 99. The 49ers too, their MO at that pick, they've had multiple 3rd round comp picks, and they've always picked like even earlier in the 3rd round. They picked Witherspoon. They've picked Embry Thomas, who worked out really well, ran 4.3s, I think, which is kind of surprising actually when you watch his tape. And although he's not slow, there was Tarvarius Moore, right? And it's like they've really swung on this like speed at heightened speed. Like I would look for someone who's 6 feet and ran fast, and they're hoping they can put that together. So I'm thinking like Trice is probably, like, if I had to guess who the 49ers are looking at, and look, Trice could play safety or corner, but Corey Trice, if I had to guess just based on players the 49ers have drafted before in that area and guys that'll go in that area, Corey Trice is someone I'd probably put some money on. The 49ers drafting with one of those late 3rd round picks.
What do you think about Kei'Trel Clark? I watched the film. I got my notes.
You got your notes? Okay, I want to hear your notes because my guy Keith Sanchez, who is one of the new hosts of Locked On NFL Draft, and he was with us in the anchor booth for the entirety of the Locked On NFL Mock Draft Special, which you guys have to check out. That's his favorite sleeper. He said he gave him, he's kind of like a day 3, round 4, round 5 guy in most mock drafts and most rankings. Keith Sanchez gave him a 2nd round grade. He said he is his favorite sleeper in this entire draft class. And I watched a little bit of him, and I was excited, and I was interested to hear what you thought about Kei'Trel Clark out of Louisville, right?
Yeah, out of Louisville. And I was actually just in Louisville they got a nice little downtown area. It's called this something 4th Street or something. And I took my wife to Guy Fieri's restaurant and we went bowling. It's pretty cool. All right, but anyways, uh, one of the cool things I like about watching film is when you notice someone else, right? So it's like I'm watching Clark, and all of a sudden I just keep noticing this running back out of James Madison, Percy, a guy obese or something like that, and he just looked good, and he's like twitchy, and he was like sudden, and he's like running strong, and I'm like, this is why it's so hard taking running backs high because there's a Percy Aggie obese.
Everybody's got one.
And it's like, hey, this is a solid back, you know. Then I went and I looked at his stats, and as a redshirt freshman, he ran for like 1,300 yards, 19 touchdowns. But then things started tapering off from there. He had some injuries, it looked like. So he might be a guy undrafted where somebody gets a running back that might end up being good.
I'm a little bummed out. He did make the beast. Shout out to the Athletics NFL draft analyst Dane Brugler, who puts out the beast every year. It's got 400 prospects in it. Percy, a guy obese, is in there, or obese, maybe. I don't know how to pronounce his name, from James Madison. He makes the list. He's his 87th ranked running back in this year's draft. 5'11", 214, but there's no testing numbers. So I don't know if he ended the season injured, which is my guess because there's no testing numbers on him at all.
Yeah, he ran for like almost 1,000 yards this year, but his numbers kind of the peak of his college numbers were definitely his redshirt freshman year, where he went
maybe
crazy.
A future San Francisco 49er undrafted free agent that ends up running for 900 yards before he gets hurt with the 49ers.
Right, but Kei'Trel Clark, Louisville cornerback, number 13. I don't know if you have his number. Is he slightly built? Because that's my first note. Slightly built and plays small.
He is slightly built. He's 181 pounds, 5'10", 181.
Okay. I felt that watching the film. I feel like he at times he wasn't in a rush to get off of a block to go make a tackle, whether it was at the line of scrimmage or down. But I did see other times where he was in pursuit and he would throw his body around. So he's willing to tackle, but it didn't feel like he would go out of his way to tackle. And the reason why that is a little bit more important is because I think he might be a nickel at the NFL level. But he's twitched up. He had good feet. Turn and run was good. I didn't see guys getting on top of him vertically. He played a lot of off coverage. I would like to see him in a little bit more man coverage. Has necessary feet, change of direction. I like the outside and slot versatility, but it felt like he's a nickel. And he would go to the nickel in nickel situations. So in base defense, he played outside. Almost felt like more of a field type corner. And he might be a guy where you just have to do that with, like, you have to be in the field. Because I can't have you in the boundary, teams run to the boundary, and then now you have to be like this aggressive corner. And I don't think that's necessarily his game. But if you are in the nickel, and I go back to 2017, the San Francisco 49ers had this cornerback by the name of Kei'Trel Williams, nickel guy. And they were in the red zone. They're playing against, and as a matter of fact, it was the 2017 week 2 playing against the LA Rams. In the Rams, they had young Cooper Kupp. He was like this is rookie year, second game in the NFL. And Kei'Trel Williams engages with Cooper Kupp and just throws Cooper Kupp out the way. Kei'Trel with 5'9", 180 pounds, whatever he is, throws him out the way, goes in, boom, throws his body in there, makes a tackle. And I'm like, that's what you need from your nickels. Because you have to be aggressive because the run will come towards you. And I don't know if Clark is quite that guy.
Yeah, that's the tough projection to nickel. You say, okay, 5'10", 180, twitched up athlete. We just put him in the nickel. You'll be good because he can hang with those, the jitterbug wide receivers in the slot. It's like, okay, but you got to be able to come down and tackle in the run game as well. And can he be that guy? That's a big question there. But man, from an athletic standpoint, I liked it. He's a competitive guy, but yeah, like you said, like sometimes you see him make a tackle, but is he going to be that K1 where he's the shark and he's hunting from the slot? And that's what's tough in today's NFL. So it's a lot easier to put the bigger safety / hybrid in the slot these days than the corner because of the positionless football that's happened on the other side of the ball, and you need to be able to support the run.
I did comp him to two guys that just kind of came to mind while watching him. And it's interesting to hear you say his size One of these guys might be similar. I don't know. Deon, did I say his name right? I just remember the small corner from the LA Rams, but they did allow him to play outside. Yeah, play with a lot of confidence. At some points, it felt like maybe they were trying to make him be the guy opposite Jalen Ramsey. I don't think that quite worked out, but kind of felt like watching him. Also, a guy that a lot of people probably won't remember. I remember him very clearly because I was actually on the Jets with him for a little while until he got into some legal issues, then got arrested like 4 times in 1 week. But anyways, another story. Cliff Harris. Cliff Harris out of Fresno. Went to Oregon. And I watched Cliff Harris, man. Skinny guy. Probably I watched him weighing at 155 pounds, about 5'11, 155, 160, small guy. Putting up 315 on the bench. I was like, what the heck is going on? Like, looked like he'd never worked out a day in his life, but he was strong as an ox. Crazy. But Cliff Harris was kind of that guy too, where it was like twitch step, change direction, naturally athletic, but just like, do you lift? Do you even lift, bro? Like you would ask him that.
Yeah. Let's see. 15 reps on the bench for Kei'Trel Clark. So not bad.
That's good. So he's strong.
Yeah. A little over 5'10", 5'10 and a half, 181, ran 4.42 in the 40. So he's got some athleticism for sure. And you see that on the field. Yeah. His career, I think it's pretty safe to say, Croc, that Kei'Trel Clark's career in the NFL will be determined by how well he is as a slot corner against the run. Because I think he's twitched up and he can cover from the slot.
Yeah. Outside, you got these guys trying to get physical with you in big bodies, right? Like, okay, think about it. The Rams, they just traded away Jalen Ramsey. Maybe they take a flyer on the cornerback. All right, Clark, man, you're a terrific athlete. We're gonna sign you or draft you. And then the 49ers throw a screen to Deebo Samuel. Like, now what? Like, what? How does that play in?
Yeah. Because big corners have a problem with Deebo Samuel when he gets the ball and he's heading toward him.
Yeah, you don't want those problems.
We got to get out of here, Croc, but I want to finish this episode with a question here from JKBG says, okay, just point blank, what round did the 49ers draft the DB? Did they take one in the third?
So when you say DB, are we talking about safety or corner?
Either
or both?
Do they take one defensive back in the third round?
100%.
You think it's going to be safety more than a corner?
Yes, I would lean more towards safety. The tough thing that the 49ers doing right now, the fans, everybody listening to this right now, they want a guy. And I know the 49ers have done a really good job of finding value in these later rounds. But typically, guys that you're drafting at that point in the third, we say third round, but we're talking about comp picks.
This is
right?
This is a closer to a fourth round pick than a third round pick.
Right. Typically, those are like fillers. Not really, oh, we have this need, so we need to address this position. That's you do that first, second, round or high third, where it's like, okay, we like this guy. Like, man, fourth round, fifth round, they drafted a punter. In fourth round,
Yeah, they drafted Wishnowsky, I think it was 110. Their last pick in the third is 102, right?
Right. So
that's the round, that's the area you're drafting
it. For fans, I think you need to draft a position of need. You need to draft Breland, the kid out of BYU, the tackle, or you need to draft this safety, you need to draft this corner. And it's like, maybe they're good. I mean, but at that point, I don't think you, or typically I don't have like these high expectations of this guy. Now, maybe they end up being good and they fit and they can just contribute like we've seen with Diamador Lenore and some of these other guys. But it's very rare, and the 49ers have done a better job of other teams, as we identified earlier last week, with the George Kittles, the Talanoa Hufanga, who end up being all pros, the Dre Greenlaws. I think they've done so great at that we forget all the other 40 picks that they've had in those rounds that maybe weren't great. And you just think that you're going to hit these guys, and more times than not, you're not. Like in that round, like I don't think you're drafting a guy and saying, this is a starter. Like, this guy is a starter. It just might be somebody that you think, think he could be a good football player. Oh, man, Lenore, he ended up starting a lot of games for the 49ers. I hate that I keep using Lenore. I hope I don't want it to be disrespectful. He's doing a great job, but that's just in my head that's the guy that everybody wants to replace.
Right. No, that's a great point. And I think drafting where the 49ers are, 99, 101, 102, you're going to get, and you're not going to draft a guy who's a perfect prospect. You're not going to draft a guy who's like, oh, this guy's cool. Oh, good. We just drafted a guy and we're going to plug him in. He's a starter and he's perfect. You have to make some concessions there. You're like, okay, this guy needs developmental time doing blank. He needs to hit the weight. You're like Blake Freeland. He's one of the most popular 49er draft picks there, mock draft picks. And you just brought him up, Croc.
I call him Breland, my bad. But
He's Blake Freeland. Yeah, you put them together. Yeah. He needs work. Like he needs to get stronger. You know, he's top heavy. He needs to get stronger, he needs to gain weight. He needs some technique work. He could come in, you could draft him and he doesn't play a snap as a rookie. And he's just sort of like a backup tackle that maybe doesn't even dress a lot. There's you look at a lot of the pass rushers. They're either super rocked up and explosive in a straight line, and can't turn the corner, or they've got good technique, but they don't really hit the height, weight, length measurables. They're not super athletic, so there's going to be something a little bit imperfect with all the prospects you're drafting in that area. And it's probably not smart to expect them to come in and be perfect prospects right away, but you have to figure out what's important there. And I think the things the 49ers have hit on is the importance is drafting the player that has the mindset that's going to get him better with whatever he needs to work on, more so than drafting the best, the best athlete with the best testing numbers at any of those spots
because that clearly hasn't worked for them.
Right. It hasn't. Chris says, Croc, thank you for coming out to the track meet last week. I don't know what track meet. Were you coaching up the kids on how to run fast, Croc?
Track meet. I was at a track meet in Stockton at Chavez High for a little bit.
There you go.
But I don't know if that's the one though. I don't know. I might have went, man. I'd be all over the place. So
Croc's all over the entire country. Every time I talk to him, he's like, "Oh shoot, I'm on an airplane right now. I'm gonna fly out here. I'm gonna fly out there. I'm going to Atlanta, going to Louisville. I'm gonna go back to California real quick." Croc is a jet setter, that's for sure. All right, we got to get out of here. Thanks everybody for making Locked On 49ers your first listen every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Croc and I back tomorrow, breaking down all the draft rumors, all the latest. And, of course, we're scouting those mock drafts right here. Locked On 49ers.
Lakers.